What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on the Digital Soapbox Network. Thank you for listening, downloading, subscribing, sharing to the Soren Baker Show. We appreciate your guys' support week in and week out, and we're very excited about today's episode because, you know, as rap continues and as things develop and evolve and how we consume music changes and evolves, you know, I think it's important for us to realize that rap is thriving in a lot of ways. And I had this idea, because we're not having a guest today, to talk about Nas and how Nas is viewed, how people look at Nas, how people appreciate Nas or dismiss Nas based on the release of the Lost Tapes 2. Now, this is a new project from Nas that just came out. He, of course, had the Nasir EP that Kanye West did that came out 2018. But with the Lost Tapes 2, we're getting some of these songs following in the footsteps of the Lost Tapes that, you know, are songs that came from some of his albums, The Hip Hop Is Dead, Untitled, and Life Is Good. These are songs that didn't make the album for whatever reason or that were recorded around the same time. And we're getting them here on the Lost Tapes 2. And what this made me think about is that people love Nas, people criticize Nas for whatever reason, but the thing that they don't really understand and appreciate is how immensely talented and how tremendously skilled Nas is in his lyrics, in his style, and his delivery. And that's something that made me want to talk about it. And the Lost Tapes 2 made me kind of go back and look at and think about a lot of his records throughout his entire discography, because people look at Nas's singles and they say he's not good at picking beats, which I don't necessarily agree with all the time. They'll say that, you know, he's not able to be successful commercially, which he has multiple platinum records, so I don't know where they get that from. But the bottom line is Nas is one of rap's best artists of all time, who releases tremendous amount of material and that we need to really look at in a different way. I know the people that love Nas look at him as the greatest rapper of all time, as the best rapper. But then there's also a sizable portion of the rap fan base that looks at Nas as kind of overrated or someone that's not really good at having a variety of flows, different styles. They'll say he's boring. None of these things that I agree with, but that's what I hear a lot when I bring up Nas, when I'm talking about some of the elite rappers in the game. And Nas has also had a steady career since Illmatic came out in 94. Of course, he had put out songs earlier, but when Illmatic came, that's kind of when you want to look at the real, in earnest start of his career. And, you know, it's continuing up till today, to 2019, and I think that's remarkable, not only for the longevity, but for the sustained brilliance that Nas has a lot of the time. So when looking at Lost Tapes 2, you know, one of my favorite songs is the Tenacious song, where he's kind of blending the historical facts, also kind of talking about a girl, and he's weaving all these stories into the song. It's produced by the RZA, which was nice, and I just think that song kind of encapsulates a lot of what makes Nas great, being able to have these historical history lessons, kind of the edutainment that Boogie Down Productions kind of stamped and made a hallmark of their work. But then he also had a tremendous amount of, you know, wordplay, lyrics that are very visual, and things going on that made it a song that shows that Nas establishing himself in 94 and then getting all the way to 2019 with a song that had never come out, that we're seeing an artist that is still in his prime as a writer, as far as his creativity, as far as his vocabulary, as far as his style, as far as his flow. And that's something that I think we really need to celebrate and appreciate, and understand that we are witnessing one of the greatest rappers of all time, who still has a super high visibility, who's still putting out a lot of material, and that also is still operating in a world that's constantly changing in the rap world, and yet he still has this high visibility without having the benefit of huge radio records that a lot of artists need in order to survive and thrive. And of course, for those that don't know, Nas is also on tour with Mary J. Blige. So there's so much going on with Nas, as is always the case, and I think it's important to celebrate, understand, and appreciate that. Now, for Nasir, like a lot of rap albums, it had its champions and its detractors, and similarly with Nas albums in general. But for an album that came out in 2018 that was helmed by Kanye West, I thought that was, of the ones that Kanye did, that one and the Pusha T, I would say were both the better ones. But I think Nasir is probably my favorite because Nas carries the album and does a phenomenal job. And one of my favorites on there was the Everything record that has also The Dream on there and Kanye. One, it's a very long song, which is unusual, especially for Nas and for an EP. But I also thought that it showed Nas's range, and that's something that I think sonically was nice, but also to be able to collaborate and do it in a way that was different. Also, we had the Slick Rick sample on there, and elsewhere on the EP, and I just thought that Nasir showed that Nas, after a big hiatus from Life Is Good to Nasir, that Nas hadn't lost it. Of course, we had heard him on doing songs with Rick Ross and others in between, DJ Khaled, etc. But, when Nas comes back, it's always an event. And that's why I think it's important to look at him. With Life Is Good, I know that's also a project that's one of his more celebrated, and it's also the one that bridged the gap from Nasir to Lost Tapes 2 that just came out. But I think that people really, really got to appreciate Life Is Good because was released in 2012, right at the time where the explosion of the social media and CDs had really fallen off a cliff as far as the popularity and the sales of them. And we had really moved at that point into the digital age from the time he had released Untitled, from the time we go to Life Is Good. And I think that it's a shame because Life Is Good, had CDs still been so prevalent or as prevalent and dominant as they had been before, we would have seen this album celebrated in a way that was commensurate to some of his earlier projects, because I think Life Is Good, really, really stands the test of time. And even though it came out in 2012, it's it has a lot of songs on it that are the timeless Nas records that really go well. One of my favorites is the Locomotive record that has Large Professor on it, and it has that type of, piano-driven beat that, people love from the New York State of Mind from Illmatic. It has that dark cinematic feel to it, and Nas is really doing what he does, kind of telling these stories, weaving in and out of the braggadocio, the street knowledge, and the visual rhymes coupled with the storytelling. And then Large Professor comes on, and it just has this super amazing element to me, to where it feels like the prime Nas. And I just really like that. And then, of course, the single Daughters, which was something about Nas talking about fatherhood in a very, I thought, insightful way, and a way that people say they always want to hear rappers talking about their families or talking about things that are important to them. And I thought with Daughters that Nas did a great job of doing that in a way that not only was meaningful, but then also showed he could tell these stories and show his vulnerability in a way that we hadn't seen that much from Nas in such an extended way, but that it also showed him evolving as a man, as a parent, as a father, and as someone who was looking to his own daughter as someone that he had to take responsibility for. And of course, that's not something that we hear often. We usually hear rappers celebrating their mom or their grandmom. So I thought it was great to hear that song on Life Is Good, Daughters. It just showed that Nas, was deeper than a lot of times that people give him credit for. And then more on the braggadocio, the Don song, which had the reggae influence, reggae sample. It has all these beat changes, which is something that I always really appreciate and enjoy with rap, is when the producer or producers change the sound of the music. And I think that Nas's ability to flow and weave and bob on all these different types of beats within one song shows why I think he's such a supreme lyricist, and someone that, if we're really just sitting down and looking at lyrics, he's phenomenal. But also the way he's able to adjust and adapt on these records, I think shows his versatility in a way that I don't think a lot of people really think about, because they'll just look at, now people look too much at music, I think, disposably, as opposed to really studying it, paying attention to it, and understanding the way that Nas is such a technician with what he does and how he does his lyrics when he's operating on this super high level, which I think he did do on the Don and throughout much of Life is Good, which then ties into, kind of going reverse chronologically here, when you get to Untitled, the album starts off, super high level with Queens Get the Money, and it's, a short song, it's very hard hitting, and it's got these street tales that Nas is so famous for, and then he of course ties it into Rakim's famous 21 MCs Put 'Em in a Line. So he's kind of bridging the old and the new and bringing it all to the forefront. And these are the type of records that, even though Queens Get the Money came out in 2008 on the Untitled album, that people kind of forget, because Nas is always going to be looked at as the Illmatic guy, and that set the bar so high for him. But throughout his career, he's released so much other material, which is why, I wanted to talk about this today, because I think people don't look at or understand or appreciate and look at all these records from Nas. Project Roach, also on Untitled with The Last Poets, where he's kind of rapping from the perspective of the Roach, but it's this double entendre, of course. And the historical elements of that tied into the present day of what was going on at the time, and what still goes on today, sadly, with the associations Nas was making on that record, I think are phenomenal, and show just how and why he's so revered, and why his creativity, I think, is basically boundless. And it's exciting to hear him, on these type of records, and not be confined to always trying to make something that's going to be a big quote-unquote hit or something big for the radio. And that's why I think Nas has been able to, sustain this career at such a high level, because he does this again and again and again. And that was another treat that was exciting on his greatest hits, where he had to survive in the times, because Nas, even though he was revered and looked at as the rebirth of Rakim of sorts, he put in the Surviving the Times song that how Russell Simmons had passed on him, and Def Jam wasn't interested in Nas initially. Of course, now he's on Def Jam through Mass Appeal, his own company. But it just shows you that no matter how talented anyone is, Nas included, even the most established, credible people in the business may or may not appreciate, recognize, embrace, or endorse your talent early on. And that's why it's important to keep going. So Surviving the Times, being on his greatest hits album, I thought was great, because it showed you how Nas even had to overcome this kind of doubt from within the rap music industry, from some of the biggest people in the business, in order to establish himself as an artist and really get it going. And that, to me, is something that's remarkable. And that song came on the heels of the Hip Hop Is Dead record, which, Where Are They Now, is probably my favorite record on there, where he's talking about a lot of the iconic artists in the rap world that the commercial people may not understand or appreciate, or that didn't have as long a run as maybe they could have otherwise. One of them is one of my favorite pioneering rappers, in a lot of ways, the party rocker, the chief rocker, Busy B. I was very glad that Nas shouted him out on that record. And then also Special Ed was somebody that at his time was looked at as one of the phenomenal rappers, and had that appeal to where he was super lyrical, could tell great stories also was able to appeal to a wide demographic and really deliver it. And Special Ed's the type of guy that, we need to support, pay homage to, and understand how he, despite never having this platinum super big record on a crossover level, that Special Ed also was still able to help get rap to a bigger place. And that's something that I think Nas has always done. So those records are the ones that Lost Tapes 2 pulled from, which made me also go back and think about the Lost Tapes because, with Black Zombie and No Ideas Original, those were two of the standouts in my opinion on that project. And it's just so interesting when you talk to artists and when you understand how record companies work and producers work and all these different things combining to really see like, man, these records were on the first Lost Tapes. And some people were saying at the time back in 2002 when that project came out, man, these songs were good enough to be on really any of Nas's albums. It's astonishing that they didn't make it. But back then and even today, we still have to deal with like sample issues, clearance issues. Maybe the artist didn't like it at the moment as much as they did when they recorded it, or the song grows on you later, because I've had the fortune to be able to be with the artists a lot in the studio and to hear them make all these phenomenal songs that never come out. And I talked about that in my why people should watch and listen and support my Ice-T Feds in My Rear View, LL Cool J, Dana Dane, and many other artists, Xzibit among them, that have all this music that's so good that they never release for whatever reason. And so with Nas, with Lost Tapes and then Lost Tapes 2, I think it's great that he's deciding to put some of this music out kind of from the vaults, because the fans of Nas and the fans of good rap are going to enjoy, appreciate, and listen to it as I did. Even if it's not some of their favorite material, they're still going to understand and appreciate that Nas has all this other material. And for me, at least, I'd much rather hear the songs than not hear the songs, because there's so many songs from, an LL Cool J, a Dana Dane, and Xzibit that I've had the pleasure of hearing, but that have never come out and probably will never come out. And there's hundreds of these songs that are out there, and it's so disappointing. People always talk about Dr. Dre and Detox and all the other records he's worked on that have never come out, and that's just Dr. Dre. So just imagine all the other artists that love, admire, and appreciate, and they have so much great material too, which is why I wanted to highlight Nas. And when you think back to Illmatic, which came out in 94, so now we're getting to, more than 2 decades in the game, 25 years and stuff. You have to understand, like, in 2018, man, this album, he did it live from the Kennedy Center with the National Symphony Orchestra. That's a huge accomplishment for an album that, for its initial run, only went gold, but was so important, so great, so phenomenal, and set Nas on this trajectory as being a very revered and commercially successful artist, that he's able to do something at the Kennedy Center. Like, nobody in 1994 could have ever conceived that. And then I decided to look up on Spotify New York State of Mind, which is my favorite, probably my favorite Nas song, period, but then also I think the best song on Illmatic. And the fact that it has more than 84 million streams on Spotify, to me, is staggering. And this was not a single. This is not a song that got a lot of radio play. This is just a super high quality song from Nas that just shows his ability to, as people say, paint these pictures, but to write these rhymes so amazingly and so vividly. And then that song in particular, of course, produced by DJ Premier, to really have this perfect marriage of the sonics and the lyrics to where you feel like you're in New York. I'm not from New York, but I've been there so many different times. And when you hear a song like New York State of Mind, it just really transports you there and makes you think about all the things that are in New York. Or if you're in New York listening to it, it definitely is like, man, this is a great soundtrack to the city. And not only did Illmatic set Nas up, but it really showed the potential of an artist. And of course, that really kicked in with It Was Written, with, If I Ruled the World, playing off the Curtis Blow and the Houdini, and having Lauryn Hill on there, of course, made a phenomenal record. And it really just shows that Nas is way more versatile than people think, which is why it's important to discuss all this, because we tend to look at our artists in rap and put them in a box and say they're A, B, or C, and they don't really move that much or don't really go into these different realms. But Nas was showing that, right off the bat, and he did a great job with that. It was If I Ruled the World, which has more than 104 million streams on Spotify. But, It Was Written also contains all these other great songs. I Gave You Power, the song about rapping from the perspective of a gun, which is amazing. And then Black Girl Lost, of course, which is a social commentary and a commentary, again, examining things in a distinctively Nas way that I think is amazing. Then, we move on to 1999, because It Was Written was so popular and is Nas's best-selling album. It took him a while to release music, but as we now see, Nas records so much music that in 99, he took an unconventional step of releasing the two albums, I Am and Nostradamus, both in the same year. So, of course, I Am was more celebrated and more, people liked that one a lot more, I think, and it sold more, which is a direct correlation there. But, it had Nas's Like, of course, on there, and it also had Hate Me Now. And both of those records, I think, showed the commercial leanings of Nas and his ability to walk that fine line of being able to make a hit record, but then also remain a top-tier lyricist. And then Nas's Like, re-teaming with DJ Premier, showing that he was able to still be the hardcore rapper that was able to, deliver a great song over a DJ Premier beat, which, of course, New York State of Mind did as well. And then with Nostradamus, even though that's probably one of his least acclaimed albums, it also had a couple great songs. I really liked the title track, and then, of course, Project Windows on there too, which I thought was great. But that leads us to Stillmatic, which is, of course, revered for one of his best albums, and something that when you look at the track list on Stillmatic and realize that that's not even generally viewed as one of his greatest projects, to me is astounding. People typically are going to say It Was Written or Illmatic, but I think Stillmatic is up there, man. You got The Ether, you got Destroy and Rebuild, you got The Second Childhood, you got the amazing conceptual execution with Rewind, and then, of course, One Mic. And of all those songs, it's really hard to say. I think Second Childhood doesn't get discussed as often, but I thought that one had a lot of really good insight and perspective as far as how people grow and how we may, even as we age, we don't always mature or learn life's lessons as we need to. And I think that that's the type of song that Nas writes, but also doesn't get a lot of credit or acknowledgement for being able to have this undertone of social commentary in his records. And I think that's the definition or a segment of, at least, or a component of what makes someone a great artist. And then Rewind, I think, is one of his most celebrated songs for a song that's not a big single. And that's amazing. And speaking of amazing, one of my favorite Nas albums is God's Son. Get Down just has this storytelling where he's going from one story to the next and kind of weaving them together. Has the beat changes, it has the James Brown elements to it, it has samples. So to me, Get Down is one of those records that really was a throwback record, but then very modern at the same time. And he's talking about going down south, and all these other things. Of course, The Made You Look was a huge single, and its amazing remix featuring Ludacris, which I thought was phenomenal. And then the I Can, which is one of my all-time favorite Nas songs, because that, I think, is really instilling a lot of hope and perspective into people, especially kids that are looking for that type of thing and that look to our rappers for these insightful, positive messages that they want, need, and are cherishing. And Nas was able to do that with the Fur Release sample or loop, but then also really employ the kids to sing the chorus. I just think it's amazing. And then my two favorite songs in there probably are Heaven and Dance, which are at the end of the album. And with Dance talking about his mother who had passed and he wanted one more dance with her. And then Heaven, you know, just kind of this imagining of heaven and is it on earth? And, you know, I just think both of those songs to end God's Son are incredible and really just show Nas as this next level artist that, you know, these are album cuts, a lot of the songs I've been talking about today, and they don't really get discussed, but I'm making this episode of the Soren Baker Show so that hopefully people will go and listen to these songs and look at the brilliance of Nas and how he's writing these songs over a lot of great beats, over a lot of great production that really show that his uncanny ability to do what he does and in an amazing way, that if you're really, really into rap and into lyrics, that he's delivering all these songs that don't get highlighted, which is why I wanted to highlight them today. And of course, people look at Nas and generally don't look at a lot of his guest appearances, but there's been several where he's phenomenal. I think probably my all-time favorite, or one of them at least, is Eye for an Eye with Mobb Deep and Raekwon on Mobb Deep's The Infamous album, which came out in 95. Man, that is one of the best songs, not only of 95, but probably of the 90s in rap. It's so amazing, and the production on there is so eerie. And then with Havoc, Prodigy, Nas, and Raekwon each delivering their own very distinctive style of rap and their slanguage and their vocabulary, and doing it in a way that's all distinctly them, but still being able to have it like a cohesive theme, I think is like astonishing. And then Nas has often been criticized when he does try to do R&B stuff, but I want to bring this up. In the year 2000, he did a remix with Joe and Mariah Carey for the Thank God I Found You song, and his lyrics on there, whether or not you like the song, if you just listen to what Nas does or just read his lyrics, do yourself a favor, because that, to me, shows when Nas is outside of what people would say is comfort zone, but then also is able to deliver these very visual, vivid rhymes about love or about a girl and do it in a way that's not corny or not whack. And it just, to me, is another illustration, which is why I wanted to bring it up, of Nas being so super talented, super versatile, and being able to rhyme and excel over all these different type of beats, and to have done it since, you know, using Illmatic as the starting point, even though, of course, there was Back to the Grill Again and Halftime before that, and Live at the Barbecue, all of which were before Illmatic. But for him to be able to do that, to do it with Mariah Carey and Joe on the one hand, to do it with Mobb Deep and Raekwon on the other hand, to have him collaborating with DJ Khaled, with Rick Ross, all these other people, Allure. He just worked with so many different artists and done all these great songs that's something that all was sparked from listening to The Lost Tapes 2, which just came out here in 2019. So all that to be said, man, I think it's important to cherish, champion, appreciate, and celebrate Nas, which is why I wanted to dedicate this episode of the Soren Baker Show to him and his work, and really go through and highlight some of these songs from Nas's catalog that aren't as well known as discussed, as well as some of his hits, just to put it all in perspective, that he's not somebody that just delivers these songs that we know, love, and think are phenomenal, but he has so much other material that we get that we really, really, really need to look at Nas as one of the best rappers of all time, as someone that we need to support and celebrate. And that's why I brought it here to you guys this week on the Soren Baker Show. So for everybody that's listening on Digital Soapbox Network, please be sure to like, subscribe, download, share, all that fun stuff. For those watching on Unique Access, thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share as well. Please follow me on all social media at Soren Baker, SorenBaker, and Unique Access, UniqueAccessent. And we'll catch you guys next time on the Soren Baker Show. Appreciate it.
In the beginning, hip-hop was ruled by the East Coast. Then the West Coast rose to prominence thanks to gangster rap.
Straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube.
Hip-hop changed the world. Gangster rap changed the narrative.
I'm representing for the gangsters all across the world.
And then changed the world again.
Cause I'll come and take your life away.
The history of gangster rap features unheard stories, unseen photos and documents, all with exclusive interviews from the founders and players who shaped gangster rap.
I think a real gangster rapper has to scare you a little bit.
The history of gangster rap written by veteran rap journalist Soren Baker. In stores now.
Yo, what up? This is DJ Quick. Be sure to pick up my homeboy Soren Baker's book, The History of Gangster Rap, if you really want to know what we do.
Be sure to check out The History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
What's that 5 on Young TV back with NWA?
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The history of gangster rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The history of gangster rap in stores now.